All right, everyone, take a deep breath. Let's do that again. Once more, let's let it out as if we were sitting beside each other trying to wake our neighbor from meditation. Happy New Year. Happy 2021, everyone. Usually this time of year we are talking about intentions and setting our goals for the year and manifesting, looking at what we want to manifest and all that. And I do encourage that, to pay attention to what you're creating and be mindful about it. But this year has me in a different space. This year I am finding myself in a space of realizing the best, the most powerful manifesting that we can do is simply our being. Our being. So I'm inviting you this year, this first Sunday in the year, to think about and feel into being the qualities that you want to see in your life. Instead of making the list of where you want to live and what car you want to have and what house you want to get and what relationship qualities you want to obtain. Yeah. How about let's invite in the being in peace, being in love, being in gratitude and joy and fulfillment and passion, inviting in those feelings and then letting life unfold, because life evolves from what you are. So life flows through us and shows up as our life based on who and how we are. So let's just be peace, right? Let's be joy. Let's be passion and purpose and happiness and love and connection. Letting go of destination happiness, right? We have so many times in our lives where we get caught up in destination happiness. And I don't just mean, a desire to travel, which we all have right now because we've been on lockdown for a year, but almost. But I mean destination like when I get that job, I'll be happy. When I get that relationship, I'll be happy. But instead, just letting go of the destination happiness and, as Jeff Foster would say, saturate this moment with loving, curious attention. What about that? Let's saturate this moment with our loving, curious attention as to what it would feel and look and taste like to just be a quality, right? The reading this morning that was shared from Mark Nepo's book, The Book of Awakening, I loved the reading and the idea of unlearning back to God. We all need to unlearn the frantic energy that we can get caught up in sometimes. That's the downside of the manifesting, the goals, the intention settings of the new year, the resolutions, or whatever you want to say, because sometimes we can get caught up in this frantic energy of we have to get in order to be happy. That's our destination focused energy. And it's frantic and it's not peaceful, and therefore it pushes away the good that we say we desire. Instead, let's sink into the moment, saturate the moment with loving, curious attention. Wow. Really being right here, right now. Because then, as Nepo says, we can unlearn patterns that have held us back. We can unlearn and he talks about how we can either learn through suffering or learn through love. So I say let's learn through love by being fully present right here, right now. Unlearn the things that have held us back. Uncover and sink into that center of being and learn to live from that place. Are you in? Yeah? Okay. So we're going to look at some things that would help us do that. Some ways that we could choose to live in love and live in peace and live in joy. But we have to unlearn some things first. We have to look at the things that we have spent sometimes a lifetime learning and practicing. Learning is just, acquired knowledge and skills, right? So we've become skilled at things that aren't necessarily good for us. We've become knowledgeable about things. We've acquired information about things that have formed false beliefs that are not good for us in many cases. One of those for me early on, I realized was a belief. I had this belief growing up in my interpretation. I won't say that it was everyone's experience that grew up in the church that I grew up in, but what happened for me on the inside when I filtered all this information in was that I grew up feeling like that I had to be unworthy, that I had to just profess my unworthiness to God. I had professed my unworthiness to God, and then maybe, like a pity love, maybe God would take pity on me if I was just expressed that I was unworthy enough times and apologized for how I am and who I am enough, then just maybe God would love me. I didn't realize that was an insult to my Creator, right? That was saying, I'm so sorry that you messed up in making me, right? And this whole idea of unworthy, why wouldn't we be worthy of the love of the one that loved us enough to bring us into being? So the first and foremost, for if you have any ideas that you're unworthy of the love of the divine, that's something to unlearn. Any ideas that who and how you are is not okay, that's definitely something to unlearn. Number two, we switched our service provider for our Wi-Fi. I won't give anyone props or put anyone else down, but let's just say the one we've been dealing with for years now was quite the spotty service provider. And I was thinking about this stuff that we need to unlearn as I was entertaining the new service provider, and realized that I now have lightning fiber optic speed everywhere that's reliable. It's awesome. And I thought, wow, that's another thing that we sometimes need to unlearn. The idea of a spotty provider, a spotty service, right? That God's over there, but not over here. That it works out for that person, but not for me. Or that I believe in this law of mind action when it comes to health, but not money, or vice versa. Or when it comes to money, but not love, right? A law is a law is a law. Spiritual laws work. That's why they're called laws. So it doesn't just work. The law of mind action, that what we think and that we feel, the predominant thinking and feeling state outpictures as our life, that's been proven over and over and over through this scientific method. So it's not a spotty service provider that we have in our whatever we call God. That infinite source, that divine love is everywhere present. As Dr. Ernest Holmes says, we live in a spiritual universe that God is in, through, around, and for us. We live in a spiritual universe. God is in, through, around, and for us. God is in, through, around, and for me. Say that. God is in, through, around, and for me. And not for me over someone else. That's another thing that we can let go of, the idea of competition. There's enough. There's enough love. There's enough of the omnipresence of the one to love on and bless everyone. Your good is not going to pass you by. Someone else is not going to take it. So let go. That's another thing we can unlearn, is the idea of competition. Okay, the next one. I don't remember what number we're on, but the next one. That God is to be feared. That God is to be feared, and that the Bible, if you grew up reading the Bible, or any scripture for that matter, is to be taken literally. Those are two things that we can unlearn and get to a higher idea, a bigger idea of the divine. And we can welcome back in sacred scriptures when we do that, and not like I did. I just turned my back on any idea of God and any idea of the Bible, because if you're telling me, we call it sometimes being beaten by the book, that there are people out there that want to beat you by the book, take the Bible and whack you over the head with it and say that you're not good enough and you're not created right and you're all these terrible things. So I had some of that, and I was like, forget it. Well, when I realized that the Bible is full of beautiful metaphors and a beautiful guideposts for living, and when I realized that the divine, by whatever name you give it, is bigger than any religion that tries to explain it, including my own, I got to welcome all that back in once I unlearned the old ideas about those two things. Another one I had the opportunity to unlearn is that life was happening to me, that life was coming at me and I was fighting it off, that I was just trying to survive, just put my head down and survive, just get on autopilot and get through this, right? That's something else we get to unlearn, because we're here to thrive, not survive. So we move off of autopilot and into mindful present moment awareness, saturating the present moment with loving, curious attention. Yeah. Here's another one. Here's a big one that for me and for so many others, a thing to unlearn is the idea that we have to protect. The idea we have to protect to keep others out is the only way to keep ourselves safe. Now that may serve you as a little child who may be in an environment that's not safe. It may serve you, right, to wall off and protect and keep others out. That may be a defense that was may have been a defense that was life-saving for you as a little child. But as an adult, in loving relationships, living in the world as an adult, we don't have to have those same things that protected us as a 4 or 5-year-old, right? We can adapt. We can move into this place of going, okay, discernment, sacred discernment. That doesn't mean we just let anyone into our heart space or into our personal bubble without discernment. Of course not. But we check our communications and we go, okay, wait a second. Was I being defensive right then? We are programmed almost as a society to be defensive, to be a no first, to be a put our hands up, stay back. Instead of, what are you afraid of? Relax. Let down your defenses. Let your barnacles fall away. Let the armor fall free of your heart. Our vulnerability is our greatest asset. So being able to be vulnerable with life. Next thing we can unlearn is that our logical brain is more important to our survival and our flourishing in this world than our intuition. That is a definite one that needs to be definitely switched around. The idea that our logical brain is more important, our thinking mind is more important than our intuition. Now, I'm a thinker. I'm a planner. I like to look and see different possible scenarios and look at things. And I think it makes me a good leader in a lot of ways. But the most important, whether it's being a leader of a community or a leader in my own life, the most important thing that I've found is intuition. Dr. Ernest Holmes said that's the way spirit moves through us, is through our intuition. It's our inner guidance system. It's our GPS. And I keep pointing here because we feel it in our solar plexus, don't we? We feel it. Sometimes we feel it in our chest when we feel tight, and that's our body going, no, not the right choice. Excuse me. So being able to allow our heart-centered, our higher self resides in our heart, right? Allow our heart center to be the space we live from. As I spoke about last week, to allow our heart to inform our mind and not the other way around. Next, here's a good one. Unlearn that loving yourself is selfish. Please unlearn that one. That loving yourself is selfish and that putting yourself last is a virtue. Please unlearn that. It's time that we learned that if we're going to give the best, the most that we have to give in this life, to be our passionate, purpose-filled, dynamic presence, to shine our light in this world, we have to take care of ourselves physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, to take care of ourselves. Let go, unlearn the idea that putting yourself last is a good thing. That draining yourself and being a workaholic and putting everyone else's needs, being codependent on everyone else's needs before your own is a good thing. Unlearn that. Unlearn that, and you will unlearn yourself back to a freedom to live from. Here's a good one too. Unlearning the idea that we have to know where something comes from in order to change it. Excuse me. Now, hear me on this. I love therapy. I'm a big fan of therapy. I've been to lots of therapists in my life, and I have friends who are therapists, and I love therapy. I love getting to the root of something, like, that's why this is showing up in my life because of this belief. I love doing that. But it's important to also realize that you don't always have to completely uncover where something comes from to change a direction. You can still change your mind. You can still change your direction in life, even when there are things that you haven't fully uncovered where they came from yet. So that's one that's kind of an elusive one sometimes that we can unlearn. The idea that we have to know where something comes from before we can change it. Otherwise, if you're not careful, you can get stuck like a dog chasing its tail on this pathway into the past, instead of staying focused on what it is you want to embody, to feel, into being. I just saw a wonderful movie. Angie and I watched this wonderful movie. It's called Stargirl, and it's a new Disney movie. I think it's Disney anyway, and it's wonderful. A wonderful movie. I don't want to give it away, but I do want to say that there's this character in this movie who is so different from anyone else. and so good with that. So good with that. So another thing to unlearn, number 10 on my list here, I think, to unlearn is what others think of us is important. That what others think of us is so important that we have to conform to what they want us to be, how they want us to show up. Define yourself and be okay with that. This character was so inspiring to see someone so free in being who they are. For many of us, it took a lifetime to be free in who we are. But it feels so good. So the last thing to unlearn is what others think of us is important. It's not. What you think of you is important. The only thing that you have to do is continually be true to you. You don't have to do that, but it's a much better place to live. That God is in, through, around, and for us. Going back to that for a second. That God is in, through, around, and for us. When we can unlearn some or all of these things, we can really start to live from that place that God is in, through, around, and for me. I don't have to protect. I don't have to push away. I don't have to wall off the world. I don't have to be afraid of the world. God is in, as, through, and around me and for me. In, as, through, around, and for me. In, through, around, and for me. In, through, around, and for me. See, when we are living from that place, it's easier to be adaptable to life. It's easier to flow with life. We live in the wonderful neighborhood of Noda here in Charlotte. I love it. It's the arts district. It's quirky and fun and cool. And one of my favorite things about it is all the community and how we come together for holidays, and when anything bad happens or anything good happens, we celebrate together. And it's been a different time during last year living in Noda and not having that normal interaction with our community. But we've still had interaction with our community. And I want to share with you, speaking of being fluid and flowing with life and being adaptable in life, coming from an understanding that things are going to work out, that God is in, through, around, and for us. There are two guys that run the company store, Joey and Scott. And Joey and Scott are just constantly living. Now, I don't know if they ever think about life the way I'm talking about it here today. We've never really talked about spiritual beliefs or anything like that. But what I know of the two of them is that they live as though they believe that there is a divine presence in, around, and through, and for them. And they're just constantly catching the wave of it. They're constantly catching the wave of, oh, this is what wants to happen now. Oh, this is what wants to happen. So they opened something called the company store. They had, in the beginning, it was just a beer garden lounge kind of place. And it was just the local community hub. Like, we just loved to hang out there and be with each other. And we would, like I said, celebrate things. We would go there if anything bad happened. Once one of my neighbors, the house burned down and their child was burned and they lost everything. And within a few hours at the company store, people just put the call out, hey, we're raising money for this family. And they raised thousands of dollars in just a few hours, right? So not just the Happy New Year or football games or the fun things, but when challenges come too. So that was our hub, right? And we got in this rhythm, and we learned that's how to be at the company store. We're just there for each other. We're having fun. We're celebrating life. Then COVID hits. Well, you couldn't be in this tiny little house / lounge. In the beginning, we couldn't even be outside together. So what did they do? They created a grocery store when people were having a hard time finding their necessities and more people were afraid to go into a grocery store. They created their own grocery store in the store. And then when grocery stores started being more accessible for people and people were able to find what they needed more and they started going back out to the grocery stores more, then they created a retail space inside for people to get what they need on that front. I've watched them evolve and have meatless Mondays because there was a need for that. There was a call for that. There was a curiosity about being vegan in the community. So they pay attention and they look at how life is flowing, wanting to flow through them, and they say, okay, we're a store now. Okay, now we're a tiki bar. Okay, now we're going to rearrange the patio yet again for the 4th time, and we're going to space it out so that everyone has their own fire pit. I mean, whatever it takes to allow life to flow freely through them. But it takes unlearning what we thought we knew, unlearning our way back to God, unlearning our way back to a free flow. But sometimes we won't do that because of the time and the energy that we've invested in how things are. With Joey and Scott, they've invested a lot of time and a lot of energy into each phase. But every time they're like, okay, we're doing this now. How much of our lives have we spent not wanting to unlearn something, not wanting to change because we are loyal to the time and the energy that we've invested? I know that happens a lot with relationships. You know it's not the right relationship. You know that it's not serving your highest and best good. It's not serving the other person's highest and best good, but you've invested your time and your energy. How could I possibly let go? Or maybe a job. Oh, but I've made it this far. I'm invested my time and my energy. Instead of being loyal to that time and energy that you've invested in whatever it is, let's be loyal to joy. Let's be loyal to happiness, loyal to love, to living life fully, and trusting that this flow of life is prolific. It will continue to create your good. Remember that as good as something is, it can always unfold into more, because that's the nature of life. So if you're afraid to let go of something because it was, but this was good, well, guess what? The next will be even better if you allow it to be so. But we get the opportunity to empower that belief. Thank you, Reverend Ned Green. I love that this morning you're sharing about empowering a belief. Ned said this one infinite intelligence, the thing itself, moves through us based on our belief, and we can empower those beliefs with an ever-expanding awakening to the wholeness of life. An ever-expanding awakening to the wholeness of life. Let's affirm this together. I empower my belief with an ever-expanding awakening to the wholeness of life. I empower my beliefs. I empower my beliefs in an expectancy of good, my beliefs in prosperity, my beliefs in love, my beliefs in connection, my belief in a world that works for everyone. I empower my beliefs with an ever-expanding awakening to the wholeness of life. You see, there's an infinite intelligence from which everything comes, the power behind creation. Ernest Holmes called it the thing itself. So let's unlearn the knowledge and the skills that we've acquired that's kept us separate, that's kept us limited, that's kept us on autopilot, that's kept us away from fully being in the freedom and the flow of life, and unlearn our way back to God. I empower my belief. I empower all my beliefs with an ever-expanding awakening of the wholeness of life. I empower all of my beliefs with an ever-expanding awakening to the wholeness of life. And so it is.